I love that logo. Actually, I just love the Gamecube. While it's not my favorite Nintendo console, it is right up there. It was a very experimental time for Nintendo, and this led to a very good lineup of games. Many long-running series got shaken up quite a bit. Zelda got a drastically different art style, Donkey Kong experimented with using bongos as controllers, and Metroid was no longer a 2D side-scroller, but a first-person shooter. I think the game that best sums up the Gamecube happens to be its launch title, Luigi's Mansion. Talk about subverting expectations. The previous two consoles launched with full-on Mario platformers, but here comes the GameCube taking away the spotlight from Mario and giving it to Luigi. Now Mario would get his game later, but even that game got some radical changes. I love the GameCube. Another trend the GameCube had was its games being poorly received at the time, but later people would appreciate them much more. It happened with Wind Waker, and it happened with Luigi's Mansion. People weren't happy with the changes Luigi's Mansion brought, which was a damn shame. But ever since then, the game has become a cult favorite. I remember when I first played this game, I had gotten it and the GameCube for my birthday and was too scared to go into the first dark room, so I stopped and played Melee instead. But when I came back to it, I found a truly special game. And seeing as it's Halloween, I think the time is just right to revisit that old haunted mansion in the woods. Mario games don't tend to have stories more complex than Peach getting kidnapped, at least in the platformers. Luigi's Mansion also isn't very complex, but it does a bit more to make it interesting. So the game starts with Luigi walking towards a mansion in the woods, though the mansion itself isn't quite what he was expecting. As he enters it, things seem pretty off. After exploring a bit, Luigi is greeted by this. Luigi is then saved by this old guy, Professor Elvin Gadd, or EGAD for short. Once they retreat to the Doc's lab, we are given the proper context. EGAD is a scientist who's been researching the paranormal most of his life, and had come up with a way to capture ghosts with the Poltergust 3000, a vacuum cleaner. He also invented the Ghost Portrificationizer, a machine that can turn ghosts into paintings. He then captured many different ghosts for his gallery, but one day all of his ghosts got freed by Boos in retaliation for catching Boolossus. Then out of nowhere, the mansion materialized next to his lab, crawling with ghosts. As for Luigi, the reason he is here is because he got a letter saying that he had won a mansion in a contest he didn't even enter. Overjoyed and not in the least bit skeptical, he tells Mario and they go off to see the new mansion, with Mario leaving first. After hearing this, EGAD mentions he did see Mario enter the mansion before Luigi got there. Luigi then decides to go and look for Mario, with EGAD giving him the Poltergust 3000 and Game Boy Horror. Luigi then explores the mansion in search of his brother while fending off the deceased and reclaiming the lost portrait ghosts. Along the way, Luigi encounters Boos, the ones responsible for all of this, and they apparently have a king. Eventually, Luigi finds Mario trapped in a painting in the basement, but is unable to help. So he continues catching Boos and encounters a few bosses, but eventually he makes it to the bottom where Mario is being held by King Boo himself, who turns into Bowser? Well, after Luigi finally catches the king, he brings back Mario to get him out of the painting in a very heartwarming ending. The story is simple, but it's very well presented. There's a bit of mystery surrounding the ghosts, not the least of which being King Boo himself, but I'll get to him in a bit. One thing this game does well is characterization. Mario is kind of a bland character, he isn't given much characterization himself, and that's fine for the platformers, but Luigi is a different story. Luigi is often known as a coward, and this game is partly responsible for that, but it's not that he's a coward. Sure, he's scared, but he's willing to face his fears to save his brother. And isn't that the definition of bravery? Luigi doesn't talk much, but we can still see a lot of personality with how he moves and reacts to situations. I said the ending was heartwarming, and I meant it. After dealing with all the ghosts, being scared out of his mind and seeing his brother trapped and out of his reach, when he finally rescues Mario, how overjoyed he is as he picks up the painting. And his reaction to seeing his brother freed at last. it gets to me. I think this is one of Luigi's best portrayals. He's scared, but he doesn't panic over weak ghosts he's already captured hundreds of. He only really freaks out when encountering bosses or being surprised by something new. Sure, he jumps when ghosts appear next to him, but he doesn't panic when walking in a room and seeing something he can easily deal with. You can also call out to Mario using the A button.
Mario! Mario!
It's pointless, but I like it. Luigi also changes his tone depending on how low his health is.
Mario! Mario! Mario? Mario! Mario!
As for the ghosts themselves, they are oozing with personality too. King Boo is a great villain. He doesn't get much time to talk, but when he doesn't waste the opportunity. His speech before you fight him is great. The way he talks about how much he enjoys watching Mario struggle in the painting, pleading for help, and how much he hates that you captured all the other Boos. And then he ends it by saying, "Now join your brother inside the painting." It's truly intimidating. And that's not even mentioning how much the music complements the scene. But there is something a bit odd about King Boo. His boss fight. I think you can already see it. And well, I have a theory. Now this isn't an uncommon theory, you've probably heard it before or thought about it yourself, but it's one I like to believe. The theory is that King Boo is Bowser, and there's evidence for that within the game. First is his boss fight. If he didn't have any connection to Bowser, why would he turn into him? Some people say it's a Bowser suit because of his stiff movements and how his head can come off, but I don't think that contradicts the theory. Maybe it's a subtle hint to how Bowser died. Other evidence includes King Boo himself saying, "The way you plead for help, Mario, I find it so satisfying. Perhaps that is merely because I remember how much trouble you've caused me in the past." Now this game is King Boo's debut. He didn't appear in any prior game, but this line outright states that King Boo has a history with Mario. How can that be? Unless King Boo was Bowser. Now Boos have been in previous games, but it was never King Boo. In both Mario World and Mario 64, it was the Big Boo, not King Boo. Some may bring up King Boo in Mario Sunshine, but it's obviously not the same character. First, the designs are completely different, and like all the other enemies in that game, it was created by the paintbrush Bowser Jr. has. Also, Sunshine came out after Luigi's Mansion. I doubt they thought, hey, let's imply King Boo has a history with Mario and explain it in the next Mario game with a weird slot machine boss. King Boo has appeared in some of the spin-offs, but just like in Sunshine, they're clearly not the same character because of their designs. King Boo in Luigi's Mansion has a very distinct design different from the ones found in the spin-offs, and the sequel Luigi's Mansion Dark Moon further cements that since it uses the same design from the first game. Also, the spin-offs can't really be used to prove or debunk theories like this since they obviously don't care about continuity at all. Do I need to bring up Mario Kart 8 with its 5 different versions of Mario? I think I've made a good enough case for this theory. But there is one more piece of evidence. Bowser is first revealed to be in the game by Madame Clairvoyant, who says, "I thought Mario had soundly defeated Bowser." And then, did King Boo somehow revive Bowser? Now why would Bowser need to be revived if he's not already dead? I don't know about you, but that seems to be very conclusive evidence. Now, none of this is confirmed, and it could be retconned, but there's just too much evidence there to suggest King Boo is Bowser for it to not be what they were going for. Although I hope they never give an answer one way or another. It's more fun to speculate and come up with theories. But that's enough of that. Let's get back to the actual game. Luigi's Mansion's presentation is top-notch. I still think it's one of the best-looking Gamecube games. The atmosphere is great thanks to the amount of detail the mansion has. Seriously, there is so much detail. This looks like it could be a real mansion, although it is very dusty. I also like the door opening scenes and how both the door and the key change to match the actual door and key. Another thing that really helps the atmosphere is the lighting. This game is pretty dark, and the way your flashlight lights up the environment really adds to it. The mansion is genuinely creepy, borderline horror. Even when the lights are on, there is a bit of unease while walking through the mansion with only Luigi's footsteps and whistling to break the silence. As for the ghosts themselves, I really like their designs. The standard ghosts are varied and have a cartoonish but intimidating look. They aren't overly cartoonish and goofy to the point where you can't really take them seriously as a threat, like in Dark Moon. What also helps are the sounds they make. Also, the Boos have the same transparency effect, so they fit in with the other ghosts. unlike in Dark Moon. And then there's the portrait ghosts, who have the most personality. They each have a unique design as well as animations and sounds, and just like with the normal ghosts, they are both cartoonish and intimidating. Most of them seem to be human, which adds to the creepy atmosphere. Not to mention they have short descriptions of what their past lives were like. It can get a bit dark, especially if you think about it too hard. Like the baby ghost, it says he was born a ghost, which could imply his parents had him after they were already ghosts, but it could also imply something quite a bit darker if you really think about it. Another thing that really makes the atmosphere is the soundtrack. Most of the music in this game are variations of the same theme, but it works quite well. The dark hallway music being one of the most memorable and haunting themes in the game. The outside parts have a great calming but still eerie theme. There are also a lot of tracks that are really catchy but very short, like Egad's Lab. The results screen, talking with another ghost. And the minigame theme. And then there's the bizarre ghost catching theme. The boss themes are also pretty good. And of course, the credits theme is fantastic. One thing that really adds to the atmosphere is when the soundtrack isn't playing, but it's never silent. Luigi will actually hum the theme in dark rooms. And whistle it in lit rooms. Once again, really adding to his character. Another good thing about the humming in particular is that it changes when Luigi is low on health. Overall, the soundtrack is great, if a bit repetitive, though that's never bothered me. But now let's get into the real meat of this game and bust some ghosts. So the gameplay is entirely different from other Mario games. You're not going through levels or visiting different worlds. The entire game takes place in one big mansion. The game is separated into 4 areas, each with set rooms you need to clear. Let's go over the first area. Right away in the foyer there is a toad. You will find toads throughout the game. They act as save points but can sometimes have useful things to say. As you enter the first room, you have 3 gold ghosts to deal with. These are the most common ghosts in the game and are very easy to deal with. To catch a ghost, you need to first stun them with a flashlight. You control the flashlight and the vacuum with a C-stick. The closer you are to them when you shine your light, the longer they will remain stunned before disappearing. So if you hit them at the very end of the flashlight's range, they will just instantly disappear. So a tip is to keep your light off and then turn it on when they are up close. Once they are stunned, it's time to start sucking.
Suck, suck, suck!
Once you start sucking up a ghost, you are basically in a tug-of-war match with them. You need to pull in the opposite direction they are going to lower their health. When you hold the opposite direction, their health will go down fast for a moment, but then slowly deplete as long as you continue to hold in the opposite direction uninterrupted. As a tip, if you repeatedly tap in that direction instead of holding it, you will shave off their health even faster. Although that is a bit risky as it can make it easier for the ghosts to break free if you're not careful. That shouldn't be a problem with the normal ghosts, but the portrait ghosts can be really stubborn. Catching ghosts is really fun and satisfying in this game. There really isn't any other game that offers the same kind of experience. Even this game's own sequel doesn't have the same feeling. After clearing a room, the lights will turn on, and most of the time reveal a chest with a key to another room inside. Before we move on to the second room, you can interact with the furniture with the A button. Using the vacuum also works the same way. Doing that can give you hearts or even money. You get a lot of money in this game. Seriously, check everything because this place is loaded with coins, bills, gold bars, and various types of jewels. Some rooms reward you with a lot of money for clearing them.
Cha-ching, cha-ching, cha-chingery. Money, oh money, how I love thee. Cha-ching, cha-chong, cha-changaroo. From pennies to dollars, any amount will do.
With all this money, surely you can use it to purchase some upgrades or something. Well, no. The money doesn't really do anything until the very end. It has no effect in-game, but you will be ranked at the end of the game from A to H depending on how much money you get. And even those ranks don't give you anything. Although it is funny that getting an H rank is harder than getting an A rank. But back to Area 1. The second room introduces the Purple Punchers. They are just tougher versions of the Gold Ghosts with longer reach, higher speed, and double the health. Besides that, this is the first room that will lock you in with spiky vines on the doors until you clear the room. The third room introduces a few things. First off is a new ghost type, the Garbage Can Ghosts. They just throw banana peels and that's it. But more importantly, this room shows that ghosts can sometimes be hiding in furniture. This is also the first room with a Speedy Spirit. Speedy Spirits are blue recolors, the gold ghosts that hide in specific objects in specific rooms. When they get uncovered, you need to catch them quickly because they move fast, and if you fail to catch them, they will not respawn. But if you do catch them, they drop a lot of money, the amount differing between spirits. After this room, you run into another toad. Back to the foyer, you can now enter the first hallway. But not before Egad tells you that there are portrait ghosts up ahead. Egad will call you from time to time, but only during important moments and not all the goddamn time like in Dark Moon, so it's not annoying and he usually has important things to say. But anyways, you now enter the first hallway. Hallways are unique because they do not light up until you defeat the boss of the area. The first hallway only has ghost mice in it, but in others there are hallway ghosts that have 0 health but can keep respawning. The ceiling ghosts are kind of annoying because they constantly appear and make Luigi stop for a moment, and often more than one can appear. Another thing in hallways are the fake doors. What do? That, so don't use them. There are a few ways you can find out if a door is fake. First is obviously checking the map. If they aren't there, then they aren't real. Another way is using your vacuum on them. If they shake, they're real. If not, they're fake. And lastly, real doors have doormats, but not fake ones. But in the first real door is the first portrait ghost. Portrait ghosts are different from the normal ghosts in that you don't simply catch them by shining your light and sucking them up. The way you catch these ghosts is completely different for every one. Not counting the boss ghosts, there are 19 portrait ghosts and they act as a mini-boss of sorts. You will find one in a room, most of the time minding their own business and not even fighting back until you start to catch them. As I said, each one is different. Once you expose their heart, you still catch them the same, but exposing the heart is sort of a small puzzle. Most of the time it's easy or very obvious. Use fire on the frozen ghost, who would have guessed? But there are a few that are a bit trickier. One example being the floating whirlindas in Area 2. I can't tell you how many times I've seen other people play this game and get stuck on these two. I can't blame them since the solution isn't that obvious, but here it is. First stand on the rotating platform, then face away from them so they become visible. Then you just wait until they take a bow. There are a few that talk to you and challenge you to a game. And then there's Madame Clairvoyant, who you can't catch until you find 5 different items that Mario dropped. I'm just gonna pretend that Mario brought his spare hat today. Some portrait ghosts even team up against you. Most of them are easy to figure out, but if you have trouble, you could use the Game Boy Horror. Game Boy Horror has a few functions. It can show you the map as well as your inventory and caught portrait ghosts. It could also be used to scan objects to get some flavored text from Luigi. But if you scan a portrait ghost's heart, they will say something. They can give a hint on how to expose their hearts, although sometimes they don't say anything useful. But regardless, once their heart is exposed, you can catch them like any other ghost. But these guys have 100 HP, and can more easily escape your grasp. Back to Area 1, you have 2 portrait ghosts before the first boss ghost. But I'll talk about the bosses later. After defeating the boss, you get a big key that leads to the next area. Then you finish the area by going back to EGAD to turn the ghost back into paintings and tally up your money. It's also here where you see what rank you got with the portrait ghost. Depending on how much health you shaved off them in one go depends on how the painting itself will look. The painting itself will change, but there are 3 frames you can get: bronze, silver, and gold. To get a gold, you need to shave off 90 of their health in one suction. So you could mess up on the first or last 10 HP, but as long as you get at least 90 in one go, you will get the gold. A way of knowing what rank you get beforehand are the pearls they drop. Every 10 HP lost, they will drop a pearl, with them getting bigger the longer the suction. If you only get small pearls, you got a bronze. If you get medium pearls, you got a silver. And if you get a big pearl, that's a gold. But okay, now that that's all explained, that's it for Area 1. I'm not going to go through the other areas in detail. That was just to show the basic structure of the game. The structure remains the same for the rest of the areas, with a few twists here and there. Now the whole game takes place in the same mansion, but despite that there is still plenty of variety in the various rooms. There are a few copied rooms. In fact, the only rooms that are copied are the bathrooms. Aside from being visually distinct, there is plenty of gameplay variety among these rooms, even though you're fighting the ghosts the same way. The most obvious examples are a room where the ghosts are only visible through a big mirror, and another that's the same but with a projector. Actually wait, if the ghosts are stunned by light, how can they be in front of the projector? Well, one thing that really helps the game to not be very repetitive are the portrait ghosts, since every single one is different. While the normal ghosts are varied themselves, you still have a limited variety of them. But the inclusion of frequent mini-boss type ghosts that are dealt with in different ways keeps it from becoming repetitive, something that Dark Moon severely lacks. Aside from that, even when a room only has normal ghosts, besides the shape and layout of the room already making encounters feel different enough, the method of getting them to appear can differ. There are some mild puzzles, nothing that is very complicated, although some could be a bit dickish like this button. Most of the puzzles revolve around using the elements. There are 3 element metals: fire, water, and ice. They allow you to shoot their respective elements from the poltergeist when sucking up an elemental ghost. Elemental ghosts appear in a source of whatever element they are, so if you want fire, search the candles. You can only have one element at a time, and even then you have a limited supply of it, but you're always able to get more if you need it. Fire is the most useful when it comes to progression, as there are several times where you need to light candles in order to reveal ghosts. If you're in a room with candles that aren't lit, chances are you need to light them. Fun fact, you can set the fake doors on fire and it'll make them disappear, but only temporarily as they will respawn. Water isn't used as much in terms of progressing in the game. There are a couple of doors that are on fire that you could put out, but besides that, you use it to reveal one of the portrait ghost's heart, and that's about it. The thing that makes water useful is you can use it to water plants to get some extra money. Make sure anytime you run into a plant you water it, because they give you some good loot. The biggest example is outside right after you first get water. If you water this seed, it grows into a sprout. If you water it again after defeating the second boss, it grows into a flower. And if you water it one last time after defeating the third boss, it gives you a lot of money, including a gold diamond, the most valuable jewel in the game. And then there's ice, which isn't used as much. The most significant use it has is against the third boss. But besides that, you use it to free some slime, and to expose one portrait ghost's heart. Now there is one more use for all 3 elements, as there are ghosts that have their hearts protected by a specific element and can't be caught until that element is removed. I don't think I need to tell you which elements are used on what ghost. But one thing that's a bit strange is that the elements also deplete the ghost's health, and if you keep using it against them and it reaches 0, they disappear. That's always kinda unnerved me a bit. Did I just kill a ghost? You can do this to any ghost, not just the elemental ones. It even works on the Shy Guy ghosts who normally need to have their masks removed. While you could set every ghost on fire, I don't find it nearly as satisfying as catching them, but it is there if you for some reason don't want to catch them. All in all, I do like these abilities. Again, it adds variety to both combat and exploration by giving you more options. Take note, Dark Moon. Also, if you press the trigger all the way, you shoot out a big projectile instead of the usual stream of it. It's not that useful, but it's there. So what else is there to say about the mansion itself? I think it's well designed in its structure, for the most part. There is some backtracking, but backtracking isn't inherently bad, and it's done well here since it's very easy to memorize the layout. You also have a map in case you don't know where to go, and it automatically shows you the door that the key you got goes to. The only time backtracking is kind of annoying is in Area 4, because most of the rooms are in the attic and the basement. It can be irritating to get a key that leads to the opposite end of the mansion, but it's not that bad. There are also ways to make getting to where you need to go faster. If you scan a mirror, it will teleport you to the foyer. So getting to the basement from the attic is simple. One tip regarding that is that there is a mirror in the safari room. Now there isn't a way to warp to the top of the mansion, but there is a way to make the trip simpler. You know this one locked door on the first floor that leads to the stairway that forces you to go all the way around the backyard to get to? Well, this door does have a key. To get it, just run on this treadmill in the rec room, and there you go. It makes getting to the second floor less tedious. Okay, now there are two kinds of ghosts I haven't talked about yet. First up are the boos. Shortly into the second area, you encounter boos. Boos were completely different than any other type of ghost. Boos only show up in lit rooms. To help find them, you have the boo radar on your Game Boy Horror, which will flash yellow when a boo is in the room, and red when one is right next to you. Boos hide in the furniture, so you can just interact with them to get them out, though sometimes you will get a boo ball or a bomb. Once you uncover the boo, you can now catch it. You don't need to stun them, just start sucking. Though you don't attach to them the same way as the other ghosts, so they can easily slip out of your grasp. This shouldn't be a problem early on because they don't have a lot of health, but as you progress, the more health they get. They also have the ability to leave the room you're in, and you then have to go and chase them to whatever room they go to, even if you have to go across the entire mansion to get there. They can also go into locked rooms. This makes the boos kind of annoying, but I don't mind it too much because for the most of the game, it's not a big problem. It only really becomes a problem late game when they start having 300 health. Boomerang always gives me a lot of trouble. But the most annoying boos are the ones in the basement, all because of this room with all the dust piles. Now they can't go anywhere, only specific rooms, and they can't go up or down a floor, so like I said, it isn't a huge deal, but it is an annoyance. Regardless, I like catching them more than how you catch them in Dark Moon. Anyway, here's some tips. Ever notice how sometimes the boo's health goes down very slowly? Well, that's because they are in a dark room. They are weaker in the light, so that's when you want to try to catch them. If a boo goes into a dark hallway, it is possible to manipulate the boo to go into the room you want him to. Simply hug the side you don't want him to go, and he will most of the time go to the opposite room. I say most of the time because it's not a 100% guarantee. Sometimes they just ignore that. Now for the last kind of ghost, the boss ghosts. There are 4 of these, and they are all different, though the first 2 are pretty similar. For those, you need to expose their heart, and then you can catch them like any other ghost. However, it is nigh impossible to get them in one cycle. I've seen people one cycle Bogmire, but not Chauncey. The amount of health you can decrease before they force you off depends on how well you do, but it usually takes 3 cycles to catch them. That means getting 90 of their health down at once is very unreasonable. Well, getting a gold frame on boss ghosts is handled a bit differently. It depends on your health. If you have over 90 health, you got a gold. It's that simple. The first 2 bosses are basically tougher portrait ghosts. And they're pretty fun to fight, though not that challenging. But then there's Boolossus. If you played this game before, you know what's up with this guy. Okay, so Boolossus is a giant boo made up of 15 boo. Each boo does actually count towards your overall boo total. Here's how you defeat him. Use the vacuum to drag him to one of these statues and make him hit the horn to separate them. Then you need to use ice to freeze the boos, which allows you to suck them up. Sounds simple, right? Well, it is, but as the fight goes on, the boos will put more of an effort to avoid your ice, and it can be difficult to actually freeze them. It doesn't help that for some reason, if you press the L trigger all the way down, it takes a second for anything to come out, but they still flee you anyway. You can use the big ice projectiles to get them, but good luck actually aiming it. Now this wouldn't be so bad, but the boos will frequently fly out to where you can't get them. The best way to catch them is wait for them to attack you, dodge, and then freeze them there. Now Boolossus is a pain in the ass, but I still actually prefer this fight over the one in Dark Moon, even though that one is easier. Kinda like with the normal boos. It's weird, it's more frustrating here, but still more interesting. Then there's the final boss, which is honestly one of my favorite Bowser fights in the series. It's pretty simple, but the atmosphere is great, and there's a decent amount of challenge. You beat him by catching King Boo. To get him out, you take this spiky ball and... Once King Boo is out, he has 500 health, so it takes a few cycles, but it's not too tough. And that's it. After completing the game, you can use that same file to start over again while skipping the intro. But you are also given an extra option in the lab, the Hidden Mansion. This is basically a hard mode. Aside from having a star in the corner of the screen, you take more damage from ghosts, but your poltergust is also more powerful, meaning you can drain a ghost's health a lot faster. This in a way kind of makes the game easier, as the extra damage you take doesn't mean too much since it's easy to get health back, and it was never hard to avoid ghosts in the first place. And it most certainly helps when trying to get all the gold frames. Oh man, I could have talked about this earlier, but trying to go for all gold frames in the normal mansion can be a major pain in the ass. If you mess up at all and they break free without dropping the big pearl, you need to quit and restart the game. Most of them aren't too bad, but there are a few that will take a while to get, like Mr. Lugs and Petunia. Jeez, these 2 took a while. Not even Biff Atlas gave me trouble. I got him in one go. Same with the Clockwork Soldiers. but with enough attempts it is feasible, mostly. Here I got all gold frames in the normal mansion, except one, Sir Weston. I'm convinced Sir Weston is impossible to get a gold on in the normal mansion without some kind of glitch. Why is it so hard? Because of the ice making it much more difficult to pull against him, which allows him to easily escape. I don't know how anyone can say Biff Atlas or the Clockwork Soldiers are the hardest. They are simple compared to Sir Weston. But it's much easier in the Hidden Mansion. If you want all the gold frames, do it there. Well, before I wrap this up, I've noticed there's a lot that people don't know about this game. So here's a bunch of tips, tricks, and trivia that you might not have known about Luigi's Mansion. In some rooms, there are books you can interact with. When you do, you can actually read them. They can add some flavor text or give you hints on how to deal with portrait ghosts. Ever notice that sometimes walking in one of the hallways a gold mouse will appear, and if you catch it you'll get a lot of money like the Speedy Spirits? Well, these can appear in a few locations at random, sometimes in rooms, and one in the sealed room. There's also another way to find gold mice. In specific rooms there's a hidden wedge of cheese, and if you scan it a gold mouse will appear. Unlike the Speedy Spirits, if you don't get them right away, you can try again as long as the room is still dark. So now let's talk about the blackout. As you enter Area 4, the power goes out and you have to find a key to the breaker room to restore it. Definitely one of the game's highlights, and it has a few interesting secrets. One thing I noticed is in a couple locations there are more fake doors than usual. It's only in a couple places, and I doubt by this point in the game anyone would actually fall for them. But I still found it interesting, and I haven't seen anyone else notice them. During the blackout, there are actually a few Speedy Spirits in rooms you've already been that weren't there prior. One is in the conservatory in the piano bench, one in the hidden room in this chest, and another in Chauncey's room in the crib. Also note that Speedy Spirits that were in rooms before the blackout started will not be there now even if you haven't activated them or cleared the room. So if you want the spirit in the breaker room, do it before this point. Having trouble getting those Speedy Spirits or doing anything else during the blackout because ghosts keep spawning? Well, there's a simple solution. Just catch them. There actually is a set amount of ghosts that appear in each room during the blackout, so even though the lights don't come back on, they will still stop spawning after you catch them. However, they will come back if you leave and return. In certain rooms, sometimes small objects like books, pots, pans, plates, or even dolls will fly towards you to deal some damage. They can sometimes happen while trying to catch a portrait ghost and interrupt your gold frame, and the worst part is they respawn after hitting you. Well, if you suck them up instead of letting them disappear by hitting something, they don't respawn. So if you're trying to get a gold on Soupy or Jarvis, make sure to clear out the projectiles first. The next one isn't a useful tip or anything, I just thought it was cool. So to get to the observatory, you first go through the Astral Hall. In this room, after lighting the candles, you are locked in until you clear the room. But that only happens after lighting the candles, and the door to the observatory isn't locked. So can the Astral Hall be skipped? Well, this is what happens if you try to go through this door before clearing the room. If you're trying to get all the gold frames, this will be useful to know. The twins and the Clockwork Soldiers are unique, as you are catching more than one portrait ghost. The criteria for getting the gold is the same, but it only applies to one of them, the one who drops the pearls. For the twins, it's the red one, and for the soldiers, it's the blue one. So be sure to catch the others beforehand, because it doesn't matter if you mess up with them. Another thing to note is that not every room in the game is mandatory. There are quite a few you can skip. Any room that doesn't reward you with a key doesn't need to be cleared. Although keep in mind that you could miss boos if you skip rooms. You don't need every boo to complete the game, but you need at least 40. And if you don't get them all, you miss out on the second gold diamond, and most of the optional rooms give you a lot of money, so it's not advised to skip rooms if you want an A rank. Speaking of which, after defeating King Boo, you get his crown. Alright, it must be worth a lot. Well, no. It's actually only worth a single coin. Yeah, and you can get a red diamond that is also only worth that much. I would complain about the red jewels being worthless, but there's also rubies that are worth a lot more than the sapphires. Suck it, Blue. And finally, let me tell you fellow Americans just what you're missing. The PAL version of this game actually has quite a few differences, most of which have to do with the Hidden Mansion. The US version only changed damage done and received, but nothing else. However, the PAL version changed a lot in addition to that, the most obvious being the entire game is mirrored. Also, the bosses are slightly changed to be harder. With Boolasis, you now ride on the Poltergust, which makes the movement more slippery. The amount of normal ghosts have been increased, and in the artist studio, each painting spawns 5 ghosts instead of 3. The rooms are darker, there are less hearts you could find, the amount of health boos have is changed, where most have more health, but some have less. Boos are also more difficult to catch, and you need 45 of them to beat the game instead of 40. And the Speedy Spirits and Gold Mice always drop a diamond, which considerably increases the amount of money you can get. They also increased the amount required to get an A rank, and made it impossible to get the A rank in the normal mansion. Jeez, that's a lot of differences. I guess they figured the Hidden Mansion was lame, so they decided to spice it up for the PAL version. Which I like, but I don't like that they did that after the US version was already out, so I can't play that version. I've always wanted to try this version. Maybe someday I'll invest in a PAL Gamecube to finally try it out, if only it wasn't region locked. Another thing I wish I could try would be the Luigi's Mansion beta. I miss seeing weird and different betas to games. Most of the time nowadays, there isn't much of a difference between the early builds of a game and the finished product, at least from what is shown off. The beta for Luigi's Mansion really fascinates me. There are some interesting elements. Some I think would be cool if they stayed, although others I'm happy were cut. Like the poltergeist overheating, or apparently needing to empty it out from time to time. Another thing I'm glad was changed was the music. The final version is so much better. There was some disturbing imagery here, and the concept was apparently you only had 24 in-game hours to save Mario. While I don't think I would like the main game having a time limit, I think it could have been a cool extra difficulty mode. One thing I really wish was in the final game are the hallway ghosts that appear behind you and scare you so much you're forced to crawl on your back for a while. I did like that they brought this concept back in Dark Moon with the sneakers, though they don't have quite the same effect. There also was an FMV of Luigi entering the mansion and being chased by ghosts, but the full thing seems to be lost, which is unfortunate because what we still have looks good. Hopefully someday someone will find the full thing. There's plenty of videos about the beta if you care. I just think it's pretty cool. But regardless, Luigi's Mansion is a fantastic game. It's filled with charm and personality, with an atmosphere close to that of a horror game. It also helps that the gameplay is fun and unique, bringing a one-of-a-kind experience that hasn't been replicated by any other game, including its own sequel. It's not the most challenging game, and it's fairly short. I've been able to beat it in about 3 hours. But it's just fun. You know, I wish people wouldn't be so afraid of copying other games. Because I know I would love for someone else to make another game like this if Nintendo won't. But here we have a case of a game that's so unique that if someone tried to make a similar game without completely changing everything about it, people would complain about it being a ripoff. I say do it. I want more games about catching ghosts with this kind of gameplay. But anyways, I know I've ragged on Dark Moon a few times during this video. I just want to say I do think Dark Moon is good, just that I think the original is better in pretty much every aspect. It's still good and worth checking out. I might review the game sometime, but it won't be for a while if I do. Besides, I don't have the ability to record it. But anyways, Luigi's Mansion is good and you should play it. It's one of my favorite GameCube games. In fact, I'd put it at number 2 under Thousand Year Door. It's a game I revisit every Halloween. If you were put off by how different it was from the other Mario games, I implore you to give it a chance. You might just like it. But that's enough for now. Thanks for watching, and happy Halloween.